The following program is brought to you by the League of Women Voters, Oakland area. The League of Women Voters is a national, non-partisan organization established to encourage citizen participation in government. It never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. The statements and opinions of the candidates are presented in the interest of public service and in no way are to be construed as endorsement thereof by the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters takes no responsibility for any of the views or facts stated by the candidates.
Good evening. Today is June 22nd, 2022. This forum will feature the 5 candidates who have filed for state representative for the 20th district. The district includes West Bloomfield Township, Orchard Lake Village, Sylvan Lake, and part of Commerce and Bloomfield Townships. There are 3 Democrats and 2 Republican candidates. You will have
Kiko Harbor.
You will have, thank you. You will have the opportunity to vote for 1 candidate for a 2-year term. The forum is being taped by and will be broadcast on Civic Center TV. The sponsor of the forum is the League of Women Voters, Oakland area. My name is Susan Liebetrue, and I'm a member of the League. I am not a resident of this district. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, national, nonpartisan political organization. Our members do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we never endorse a candidate, we're directly involved in shaping the important issues that keep our communities strong. As a League of Women Voters member, I have the opportunity to contribute in a leadership role such as this one that has great impact on local, state, and even national issues. If you're interested in learning about how you too can become a member, I encourage you to visit our website at lwvoa.org. The League of Women Voters, Oakland area, is providing this forum as an opportunity for candidates to express their views related to their candidacy. The League does not endorse any candidate or political party. Statements expressed by candidates are not endorsed nor opposed by the League of Women Voters. The League does not certify any candidate responses as accurate. Voters are encouraged to fact-check information shared at this forum. The format for the forum has been established by the League of Women Voters. We ask that the audience remain silent during the forum. Please turn off all cell phones. We ask the candidates answer the questions with their views only and not interrupt one another. The candidates will be answering questions submitted by the audience and screened for duplication and appropriateness by Jerry Rentschler and Maria Yarwolison. Pages Maxine Moonshine and Maureen Christensen will circulate with paper and pencils for your questions. Turn your questions into the pages. The format is as follows. All candidates will be given 1 minute for opening statements in alphabetical order. Closing statements will be 1 minute in reverse order. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question in rotation unless otherwise extended by the moderator. All candidates will be allowed equal time to answer questions. Our timer is Kath Maisner. Candidates for state representative for the 20th district are Democrat Noah Arbit, Democrat Ken Ferguson, Republican Diana Theresa Mohyi, Democrat James Sklar. Sklar, thank you. Correct me every time because this will be rebroadcast.
Okay.
So hopefully I won't do this again. Also on the ballot is Republican Albert Mansour, who's been invited but who has not yet responded. We're going to begin the 1 minute opening statements in alphabetical order with Mr. Arbit.
Hi, my name is Noah Arbit. I'm running to be your state representative here in West Bloomfield. I am born and raised in West Bloomfield very proudly, and I'm running because I was sick and tired of West Bloomfield being an afterthought in the policymaking conversations in Lansing. And, you know, I really believe that we need bold new leaders who will exhaust every path to find innovative, common sense solutions for our community. And that's what I'll do. That's the kind of person I am, and that's the kind of representative that I will be. In my campaign, I'm prioritizing making Michigan a national leader on hate crimes, as well as making sure that kids, seniors, and everyone in between have access to critical mental health care, which is an issue that's not just a human rights issue, it's an economic issue, and it's a public safety issue if we want to build safe and resilient communities here in West Bloomfield and across the state. I really hope to be able to earn your vote and look forward to serving you as your state representative. So thank you so much, and thank you for being here, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for having us and for all that you do.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
Thanks. Hi, my name is Ken Ferguson. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and West Bloomfield Parks for hosting us tonight. I know it was a last-minute change of venue. Also, thanks to my fellow candidates, because this is democracy in action, so way to go, everybody. And of course, I'd like to thank my wife, and I wanted to thank my kids, but they decided not to come at the last minute. So thank you, my wife, for supporting me. We'll have a discussion with our kids later. Next, I have a question for the audience. What are the qualities and qualifications that you expect out of our next representative? When I'm knocking doors and talking to voters, they often ask, what's the difference between you and your opponents? And once we get past the gray hair issue, it's really about experience. Experience as a veteran, as a public school teacher, as an elected school board member for West Bloomfield these last 6 years. I am the only candidate who has had a career, and I've been a proud public school teacher for the blind and low vision for 24 years. Proudly served our country in Desert Storm, and I'm also looking forward to finishing my term in December and becoming our next state representative for West Bloomfield and the surrounding area. Thank you all.
Thank you. Ms. Mohyi?
First of all, again, thank you so much, League of Women Voters, for hosting this event and the West Bloomfield Parks and Recreation. My name is Diana Mohyi, and I also am running for District 20 State Representative. I have had over a decade experience and a career as an attorney. I have had the pleasure, most recently in my career, to serve those that need family law services, such as divorce, custody, guardianship. So I have had a lot of experience with the issues that come up in families through the nature of my work. I have been a small business owner for over 5 years, running my own law practice. I'm licensed in both the states of New York and Michigan. Experience matters, but so does policy. I decided to run for state representative because the policies that were in place over the last 2 years were very destructive to my business. As soon as the shutdowns happened, I had no cash flow, and similar to other small business owners, I suffered.
Thank you. Mr. Sklar?
Thank you. So I think this primary election and election in general comes down to three things. The person who knows Michigan's politics, person who knows Michigan's laws, and the person who knows our issues. My name is James Sklar. I'm short introduction about myself. I've worked 3 years in the Michigan House already. Before that, I interned at the White House under President Obama, and now I actually got my law degree from Michigan State University College of Law. And I'm excited to take all the questions you guys have here and answer them, and I'll finish up with that and just say thank you for allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you. We'll now begin the question and answer segment. Now, the first 3 questions that we ask have a 2-minute time limit. I just want to remind everyone so that you're going to have a little bit longer to address these rather weighty issues. So we're going to start with Mr. Arbit in alphabetical order. Our first question is, what can a state legislator do to protect the right to vote?
Well, I think there are a number of things that state legislators can do to protect the right to vote, and the first is not introducing and not voting for bills that are threatening people's right to exercise the fundamental free right to, at the ballot. And I think that we have seen, at least for part of this district, in the old 39th district, we've had a representative who has not been faithful and acted with fidelity on that issue, and has actually worked to undermine our democracy and undermine our elections. And I think that that is certainly not representative of who we are in this community, and certainly not representative of where we should be going in the state of Michigan. I believe that this growing movement across the country that is, basically against the rule of law, that is working, on, really on the extremes to ensure that certain types of people don't have the free exercise, the foundational constitutional right to elect our own government, is being undermined from the very people who benefit from that system. They are elected through democratic means, but are not working to preserve it. And I think that the threats that are arrayed against us are very severe, and that we need bold leaders who will work relentlessly to be a safeguard against that. And that's what I will do as your state representative. We need to make sure that every single office, that we are electing leaders who will be a backstop against that those kinds of efforts. And it's not just the governor. We need the governor, but we also need a state legislature that's actually going to work with the governor to make sure that we're protecting democracy and protecting people's right to vote. I think that, especially in a community like West Bloomfield, which is incredibly diverse, we have so many minority communities here. I'm part of the Jewish community, which is a substantial part of our community here. There's Chaldean community, Muslim community, Asian community, Black community. We know well that when democracy falters, minorities are among the first to be threatened. And I think it's incredibly important that we have voices and representation that actually understands that. And as your representative, I will be the first to be among those representing our diverse communities. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
Protecting the right to vote. First, we have to speak the truth. And the truth is, our last election was one of the most, if not the most, secure election we've had. We need to make it easier for people to vote, our citizens, which means promoting, since 2018, no reason absentee voting. We also need to begin counting those ballots early and not necessarily divulging the status of those elections. But if we start counting them early, there won't be hiccups on the night of the election. Ensuring that we have ample and secure drop box locations, and ensuring there is no intimidation at polling places, which means that we have to make them gun-free zones. And when the ballots are being counted, is making sure that we have rule of law and order so that there's no intimidation there either. Because we want to make sure that the people that have been elected are elected. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Mohyi?
Thank you. For a secure vote, we need to have a constituency that is confident that the vote has been correctly counted and is secure. We all agree that a vote in this country or any country is the most valuable thing that you can have. And so we need to have at least a minimum level of protection for it. The lowest cost effective way that we can do that is to require voter ID. Most people can obtain a voter ID. Now, you can come up with scenarios and hypotheticals as to when someone might not be able to get that, but it's very rare that they can't. So we need to use basic security measures. We need to have affidavit signature validation to make sure that the person casting the vote actually did vote. We can't have drop boxes that are not observed during the night, and that allows for illegal ballot harvesting, where people can drop significant amounts of ballots into boxes, and of course, those ballots are counted just along with the rest of them. As soon as the sleeve is removed, then all the ballots similarly look the same. We need to have confidence in our system, and the only way to do that is to have certain measures in place. No one is trying to steal someone's vote in that they're trying to make it harder to vote. It's more about making sure that everyone in the whole society feels that after an election, whether their candidate won or lost, that the election was fair. So we need to think to that, to the security of our nation. It really depends upon a secure vote and all the things that we can do to protect it reasonably.
Thank you. Mr. Sklar?
So first things first, I guess, the U.S. Constitution grants the states the power when it comes to elections for time, place, and manner. So this is at the foremost a state issue. Congress has a little bit of oversight, but they hardly step in. So when it comes to elections at the state level, it's easy. We need easier access to the ballot. This is like why we're going into government. It's to make sure that the residents and citizens can cast an appropriate ballot and make sure their voices are heard. We need to continue what we've already done, like, continuing policies like no excuse absentee ballots. They just make sense. We need to make sure more people are informed about elections and who's running in them, so we have more information to our residents. And finally, it's been thrown out there like hundreds of times, but like, let's have a national holiday or even a state holiday when it comes to voting. Our schools are already closed, but it should be a holiday so everyone can get out there and vote. And it's just that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our second question, again, is another 2-minute response question. It also is kind of a two-part question, so be ready. The first question is, how can the legislature end the gun violence epidemic? The second part of it is, how will you work across the aisle to adopt effective gun control measures? And we're going to begin with Mr. Ferguson.
Could you repeat the first part, please?
Sure. It is, how can the legislature end the gun violence epidemic?
You know, as a school board trustee, as a parent, as a teacher, most recently, obviously, the gun violence has really played a major role in my life and how I react and perceive our schools and our community. I worry about the real possibilities of harm coming to my children, my wife, who's a teacher, my colleagues, and myself. And when the tragedy in Oxford happened, it was painful for all of us. But as an elected person, I am the only person who has actually worked toward making our schools safer and having those hard conversations with my other elected folks who are of different political persuasions. I believe we can, I hate to say end the gun violence because it's so prevalent today, but if we were to start curbing it, and I would love to say, you know what, as of right now, there is no more gun violence. But realistically, we have to work across the aisle to come to some common sense solutions. And that includes making sure that we have safe and secure storage, that locks are on all weapons, that they are out of place for children to access them. And we have to hold parents and guardians accountable for their inactions or actions of allowing their children to have access to weapons. It's painful for me because when I have discussions with my kids, you know, when Oxford happened, I was on the phone with my wife, trying to figure out which one of us is going to pick up our children. And I'm also on the phone with my fellow school board members, trying to decide what we are going to do and how we're going to approach these issues, and my superintendent, and all these different stakeholders. And unfortunately, my kids had to listen to that as well. And it's hard because they both took the issue of Oxford so differently. But we need to come together and have these hard conversations, which I've had, to ensure that we make change.
Thank you. Ms. Mohyi?
So a gun doesn't work unless there's someone operating that. We can all agree over the last 2 years, mental health crisis has skyrocketed. We need to obviously come to common sense solutions for gun control. We can't have situations where children are shooting other children, essentially. We have to have safe and secure schools. We have to be wise in how we lock down our schools and not have situations where anyone can just come in and, you know, without proper security measures in place. We obviously have to address the mental health crisis, which I just mentioned, and that includes not having policies that we randomly just shut down and not allow people to have proper healthy interface with other people in public. And by having that proper interface in public, by the way, that's how a lot of the signs of mental health can be recognized as well. So we need to make sure that we provide the proper resources to children in schools. We need to have the proper policies in schools so that things like bullying don't take place, that put the needle closer to creating a bad scenario where a child that already is predisposed to violence might then do something like that. I would work very hard with even representatives on the opposing party as me to come to a solution. That requires investigating, listening to the other side. That's what I do all the time when I practice as a family law attorney. The other side wants something dramatically different than me. But in the end, the country is like a child. We need to come to the best interests of the country. And I'm willing to do that. I have the skill to do that. And I definitely recognize that this is a very important issue that we can't just let fall to the wayside.
Thank you. Mr. Sklar?
Thank you. So let's reframe that issue one more time about working across the aisle and with gun legislation. There's been a commission in the state legislature since 2016 that has been putting together gun legislation. And every single session year, they introduce common sense gun legislation, and it gets blocked every single session year. It's common sense, like legislation, and it gets blocked. And working across the aisle on this issue, Republicans have controlled the state House since 2011, controlled the state Senate since 1984. There's no coming across the aisle on this issue. We try again and again, and time again, nothing gets done. So on this issue, we need to flip the House and Senate. It's the only way we're going to get these gun legislations past the House and Senate. It's common sense gun legislation, not banning assault rifles, making sure that right now you need a permit to purchase a weapon. It should be a license, something in which you take a safety course, you get training, and you have to pass a test for. And if you want to still own a weapon, you have to show proof that you own a safe to have that weapon. That includes like updating the technology in our laws. Having that safe be like facial ID or like fingerprints. Should be harder to get into that safe than it is our own smartphones these days. And again, like I think everyone's nodding their heads in agreement, but it hasn't gotten through because these legislation gets blocked. So let's flip the House and the Senate this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arbit?
Thank you. I think that this issue has gone far beyond an access issue, and that too many people who shouldn't have access to guns are having access to guns. Because as I think was previously stated, there are so many of those, especially those assault rifles out there, which, it's not taking a knife to a gunfight. There's no way that you can defend against something that can shoot, however many bullets, per second or whatever it is. And, there are 2 days in my life that really stand out that just impacted me so much and sort of provided the foundation for why I'm even involved in politics. And that's October 26th. Of 2018, which was the Pittsburgh shooting, and then in June of 2016, the Orlando shooting. And I think what I think about in this issue is, why is it that we allow gun manufacturers to advertise to young children, to kids? And suddenly, they now believe that if they have access to a weapon, it's going to solve all their identity issues, all their emotional issues, all of the ways that they feel marginalized and small and disempowered. And so we give these children, who really need a therapist, access to a deadly weapon. Suddenly that's going to make everything better. And so I think that we need to do a lot of work, and on the state level, federally as well, on reining and treating gun advertisement like we do cigarette advertisements, and making them, not available for young kids. I think it starts with changing our culture. Why is it that we allow young kids to play with, facsimile makeshift weapons as if that is somehow something that is appropriate for children? So I am all about everything that, my fellow Democrats up here have said about this access issue. But we need to think more creatively. And I agree, too, that if voters want to see action on this issue, they have to vote for Democrats, because Republicans have shown an inability and an unwillingness to take action and leadership on this issue. And that's sad.
I need to ask the audience to please remain silent during the forum. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Mohyi, this again is a 2-minute question, and we're going to begin with you. The question is, what can the legislature do to support women's rights?
Well, women should not go backwards in the progress they've made. They need to have a right to compete fairly against other biological females in sports so that they can earn scholarships and get out of poverty. That's one example. Everyone in our society is important. And obviously, we're not all the same, and we have certain needs. And part of all of this is listening to see where the gaps are, to see what needs to be filled. Now, Obviously, I had mentioned working with the other side. That also includes many Republicans out there that act like they're Republicans, label themselves as Republicans, but are in fact closet Democrats. Just like any other state, we have people that run as a certain party because they can't win being the other party. But no matter who they are, I would work with them to make sure that my fellow female sisters are also protected. Now, I'm sure that this also alludes to the abortion issue. That is something that the public can have opportunity to have input into via referendums, ballot proposals, etc. Now, I am pro-life, and I'm not ashamed of that. But I'm also not a dictator. So although if voters want to vote me in, I would vote consistent with my beliefs. I also understand that we live in a democracy and the public has to have a right to have their say for issues that are important to them as well.
Thank you. Mr. Sklar?
So let's talk about our 1931 abortion statute that's on our books. It's been there. The only thing that overturned it was Roe v. Wade, and now with that leaked Supreme Court opinion, we're looking like that law is going to be in effect. And I mean, many Americans, we're going back 50 years. Come on. I didn't think I'd be talking about these issues now because it's like we're time traveling. And when it comes to this, again, our Republican-controlled House and Senate hasn't touched this issue. And that's why we got to do something about it. We need to repeal this 1931 abortion statute because, women are going to have to not go to the doctors. They're probably going to have to go to Canada or other states to get this health care. And honestly, I believe women and Michigan families shouldn't have to go out of state. They should be able to go see their doctors here. Again, it's just an easy, simple issue that we've already decided this on. And just because 6 Supreme Court justices have, gone this way, we've really gone back these past 5 years, honestly. And we need to fix that right now in the Michigan legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Arbit?
Yeah, so I'm pro-choice, and I believe that every woman has the right to have free exercise over her own body, as well as the time and the ability to choose the time and manner in which she would like to expand her family. I think that is a bedrock human right that every woman should be able to have. But I also think that we have to take a look at this broader issue, this broader trend, this broader phenomenon of what this Supreme Court is doing right now, which is not just stripping rights away from women that have been in effect for 50 years, but taking a sledgehammer to the entire fabric of constitutional rights, the individual right to privacy that undergirds the bedrock of all of these individual rights that we have had for the past 50 years. My right to get married to who I want to get married to the person who will eventually be, the person that I fall in love with. That is under threat too. Our right to have, contraception is under threat. Every single bedrock principle that we have to determine our own lives is under threat by a Supreme Court that is basically trying to institute a fundamentalist version of one religion and map it onto all of our laws as the foundation of our laws. I'm sorry, but I don't know where I fit into that picture. I don't know where so many people in our community fit into that picture. And so if I'm elected to the legislature, I will be a relentless voice for every single person in this community who doesn't see themselves in that vision. And I just think that we have to make the connections between all of these threats that are arrayed against us. And I can't believe that we are sitting here in the year of 2022 thinking that we could be reverting back. It is just unconscionable. And I think, too, we see what's going on in other countries, Hungary, the Philippines, Brazil. The leading indicator of democratic backsliding is erosion in abortion rights for women. And so I think we have to take this very seriously. And it's time that the Democratic Party stands up and starts actually fighting for people.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
I got a lot of emotions going on in here, so I'd like to rein it in. Could you please repeat the question?
Sure. Now I have to find the question.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Keeping you on your toes.
Yes, yes. Okay, what can the legislature do to support women's rights?
I thought it was a two-parter. Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to point out again that I'm the only elected who has actually worked across the aisle to address issues collaboratively. Even though we're a nonpartisan, technically nonpartisan school board, people have their own opinions. And so it's about, for me, it's really about, again, speaking the truth and sharing stories. Because when you share your story, for example, a woman sharing a story of having an abortion is very powerful. It's not just typically because they felt like it, it's because it was a traumatic experience. And I have to say that as a girl dad, I have two daughters. One is not a girl, she's 28, she's a woman. And I have one 11-year-old, and I have a boy, but I'm not worried about his reproductive rights, quite frankly. It angers me to think somebody else feels they have the power to choose for my daughters. You don't know my daughter's story. You don't know what they have gone through in life. You don't know their physical needs or what possibly could have led to a pregnancy. I have taught special needs kids in Detroit and young people up to the age of 26, one of whom, that I'll mention, was being sexually abused by a family member. And if we think that a law which would dictate she is to carry that child to term, that is inhumane. And that's what this law on the books would do. We must stand up for all women, because if we put a line in the sand, we're going to go past that line in the sand. Because there's going to be some other situation that we just don't know about, and we have to change our stance. So we must protect every woman's right to choose. Because, again, as a guy, I don't know what it's like being pregnant. You know, we need to make sure that the women that are affected and impacted are the ones that choose their course. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to 1-minute questions, so you will have 1 minute to respond to each of the following questions. Mr. Sklar, I'm going to start with you. Michigan is a very diverse state. What experiences, both work and professional experiences, do you have working with Michigan residents from all walks of life?
Yeah, well, I'll just go back to my experience. I worked 3 years in the state house, and part of my responsibilities would have to do with constituents, helping constituent issues. I was working during COVID when unemployment hit, and a lot of residents would call in the legislature and be like, hey, I don't know what's going on with my unemployment. You're the first person I'm talking to in the government. Can you help me? And so I would have to counsel them and be like, hey, okay, it's going to take this long to go through unemployment to maybe get your benefits. I can't give you a time frame, but here's at least all the information I can give you. And after I've got done talking with a lot of residents, they'd be like, oh, you're the first person to ever tell me that. And, they left the phone call, it's like they weren't walking through the forest anymore. They could see at least a trail. And I've dealt with all constituents in the state of Michigan from 2 representatives that I've worked with. And, it's just so diverse. And there's always an issue that needs problem solving. And I've solved a lot of those problems from constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arbit?
Yeah, I started, I worked for Governor Whitmer on her team, and then I worked in the legislature for a while, and then I worked at the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office as Director of Communications. And I think, the breadth of my experiences, I have learned a lot about our community here. And of course, I'm the only candidate in my primary who's actually from our community and who's actually lived here in this community my entire life. And I think that, to me, is actually the thing that drives me in terms of my service and my desire to be, the state representative for this community. I always say, I'm not running to be something, I'm running to do something. And, for me, it's all about West Bloomfield and feeling that West Bloomfield has been an afterthought in the policymaking conversations in Lansing. And if I'm elected as your state representative, that will certainly not be the case, because I love this community. It's an amazing place to grow up, and I will fight for every single resident, no matter who you are, no matter, what ethnic group, what racial group, what religious group you come from, because we have so many needs in this community, and I will be a relentless advocate for you. So,
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
I was still fuming from the last reproductive rights question. Could you please repeat it?
The reproductive rights question? Or
No, the current one would be better. I could go on.
Okay,
The last
okay.
question too, if you like.
Sure. Okay, Michigan is a very diverse state. What experiences do you have, both personal and professional, that enable you to work with Michigan residents from all walks of life?
Again, going back to being a public educator, I taught for 15 years in Detroit Public Schools, on the border of Detroit and Dearborn, and I still have wonderful relationships that I built while working there. One of them is my wife. We started working off the same school. But at our school, at O.W. Holmes Elementary, we had to send notes home in 8 different languages. And that really gave me a valuable perspective of just how diverse Michigan is. And it's important that we have a representative who has experience with diverse populations. Not only teaching, but I represent West Bloomfield School Board at the DEI Committee for Oakland schools. I also have the endorsement of Engage, which is a Muslim American group, because they know that I am a person that wants to bring people together from all walks and faiths and really be supportive of everybody in our community and our state.
Thank you. Ms. Mohyi?
Thank you. So I did grow up in the area, and I had also the opportunity to leave the state for law school, as well as to work in New York for a while. So that has given me opportunity to encounter people from a variety of backgrounds. Now, in the state of Michigan specifically, growing up, I've come from a diverse background, being, Eastern European and part Middle Eastern. But beyond that, the area that we live in is very diverse. The people I went to school with, the people I had some work experiences with were all from different ideas and backgrounds. As a family law attorney, I have to deal with different issues in different walks of life, from guardianships, which is for children with, they could be disabled, and also older people out there. There's also parents with child custody issues. So I've had opportunity through dealing with the public as a small business owner in that arena to be well aware of many issues that have issues tied to Social Security, etc.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on again with another 1-minute question. We're going to start with Mr. Arbit. The question is, there seems to be a blurring of lines between church and state. What's your view of religion in government?
Yeah, actually a lot of the work that I have done in my career, I'm founder and chair of the Michigan Jewish Democrats, is trying to put a new face on faith in politics, because in my opinion, the way that a lot of people in politics have used faith is as a cudgel against other people, in a way that I don't think represents it. For many people, faith is something that grounds them. It's something that impacts how they move through this world and walk through life and gives them a grounding for service. That is certainly the case for me. But it is okay if someone doesn't share that faith or doesn't have faith at all, and we need to be a representative for everyone. And our laws, our advocacy has to be based in real tangible solutions for people and real tangible issues. And so I believe that faith is really important, but it's not something that governs how I would make decisions for people or legislate for people, because I don't think that is appropriate. And I'm very concerned, as I previously said, about the growing, blurring, like you said, of church and state in this country, and that leaves people like me, part of minority faiths, behind.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
Yes, thank you. Church and state, separate. We must make it that, because my personal faith does not dictate somebody else's. And it's important for West Bloomfield, where we have so many different faiths and cultures represented, that we recognize that and we take that to our legislature. And we just have to keep on reminding our counterparts across the aisle that even though I'm a Christian, I am not here to represent Christians. I'm here to represent everybody within this district. And I will put this constituency's needs and desires over my own. We have to know that when you walk into the Capitol, you leave your faith at the door and you work for the people of your district and this state.
Thank you. Ms. Mohyi?
Can you just repeat the question again?
Sure. There seems to be a blurring, see, I've kept it in my hand this time. I'm getting smarter.
You learn from it.
Yes. There seems to be a blurring of the lines between church and state. What's your view of religion in government?
So we obviously don't live in a country that has a particular religion that governs the way that we operate. There's obviously people with diverse beliefs, and the founders knew that they did not want to set up a country where you would have one choice religion dictating everything for the rest of society. Now, did they know that there would be as much diversity as there is today? Probably not, but they set it up that way for a reason. However, that doesn't mean that we delete faith from the equation at all. My faith, for me as a Christian, is very much part of my ethics. So I would not leave that at the door, because that's, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. That's my view on that. Now, that said, I'm not imposing my Christian faith on people and, passing a law that they must come to my church on Sunday and all of that. But the point is, we govern a society it tied to the way that we live, the way that we operate. And that doesn't mean deleting faith from any kind of consideration at all.
Thank you. Mr. Sklar?
Thank you. When it comes down to this issue, really this separation of church and state, this wall that we kind of put up is under attack, actually. If anything, we've seen on the news this past week, the Supreme Court just released their opinion by a 6-3 majority that really allows public subsidized funds to go for private schools in Maine. And, in Michigan, our Constitution is actually pretty concrete on this issue. In Michigan's Constitution, we say that we can't use public funds to fund non-public schools. And that's the way it needs to be. And that, I think, is going to be under attack in this upcoming legislative session, frankly, from a lot of the DeVos family. So we got to make sure that we get the right people in office to make sure our Constitution can hold up strong. And I'll quote Justice Sotomayor again, what a difference these 5 years has made, totally on the Supreme Court. And now we're seeing the consequences of that when it's come down to church and state.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ferguson, 1 minute. Okay. And the question is, what's your position on school vouchers?
As was already alluded to, school vouchers is a joke, because we can't take, I'm glad somebody laughed, because it is a joke. We can't take public funds because the Michigan State Constitution says we guarantee a public education. Not a private education, not a religious education. We guarantee a public education. And if we are taking public funds from public education, we are setting up children across Michigan that are attending public education, public schools for failure, because we are diverting money from public schools to private institutions. And that's not fair. We need to have public education supporting students who will be our next generation of leaders, our next generation of teachers, doctors, lawyers, and tradespeople. And if we don't do that, we will be hurting our own society. So it's important that we make sure we fully fund public education and not sending it through these voucher schemes that have been plaguing us for years, because it is just a joke to try and take money and line the pockets of people like Betsy DeVos, of people that like Jeb Bush and all these other states that are creating these entities where they just funnel money into their pockets. And I will gladly stick around after and explain that scheme to some of you that might not understand it.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Ms. Mohyi?
Thank you. No matter how many millions of dollars are pumped into our schools, they are still a failure. This is not about more money to the schools. It's a change to the policies. The reason why people are asking for vouchers is that they're fed up with the quality of education that is provided by our public schools. We all know that market forces, competition in a market makes the product better. Those that produce an inferior product will go bankrupt. Those that are superior producers of a product will become more successful. Therefore, we do need vouchers. We need to give people an opportunity to use their tax dollars, the money that they've earned of the sweat of their brow, to be able to provide their children with a quality education. Now, the way in which that is done, we need to make sure that's fair and it's done appropriately. But the facts are, we need a way to solve the challenges with the way that our children are being educated. Children exiting school, not being able to read, not being able to think not being able to think properly and analyze properly because Common Core and also the removal of the scientific method from the schools.
Thank you. Mr. Sklar?
Like Ken said, it's in our Constitution. There shouldn't be market forces educating our students. This is a right they deserve, and they deserve the highest quality education that we need to provide them. Again, like, these are so simple issues, but we've let our students and teachers down. And on every level, we have great universities here in Michigan, and after they graduate, those teachers leave the state because our state, here's where the competition comes in actually, our state budget and competition for teachers is so low compared to other states. And that's what we need to focus on, is keeping the talented teachers in Michigan so they can teach our students the highest and best education that we can guarantee them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arbit?
For 9 out of the 13 years of my schooling, I went to Bloomfield Hills schools. I grew up on Lone Pine and Middle Belt, so I went to Lone Pine, West Hills, Andover, and I had the best education that this state has to offer at Bloomfield Hills schools. And then after my freshman year, it was clear that I needed a change, and I went to the Jewish Academy of Metropolitan Detroit. And that was the right choice for me. But I don't believe that we should be using taxpayer dollars to fund a private education, not because that's not right for some kids, but because if we divert public dollars from our public institutions, we're going to leach that support from them and leave them a husk of what they can be, what they did for me in my 9 of my 13 years as a student. And so if we want every kid in this state to have that amazing high quality education that enables them to go as far as their talents and ambitions will take them, I think we need to be investing more in public education. And that doesn't mean that parents can't have the right to, make a decision with their child about where to send their kids. But our public dollars have to be used to strengthen our public schools. And I think that is the best way that we can ensure our kids are prepared for, the economy of the future.
Well, as a public school teacher, you're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Mohyi, this again is a 1-minute response, okay? What is your vision, and how as a state representative will you work to eradicate prejudice, including racial prejudice, ethnic prejudice, gender prejudice, sexual orientation, all of those prejudices that seem to permeate?
So first of all, there's a limit to what the government can and cannot do. We live in a society where there are certain laws and they need to be enforced. Now, if those prejudices are tied to some kind of violent act, we need to throw the book at whoever committed that violent act, for example. So we have laws, and that is number one. Number two, we also need to take personal responsibility for our behavior. We have these children shooting up other children in school. That started with the parents and their failure, most likely their failure with their children. So obviously, as a state representative, I would be very concerned about the well-being of my constituents, and if there were certain laws that needed to be passed to make our environment and society safer, such as especially what happens in the school system, and if there are certain behaviors that children are expressing towards each other, well, that's a school. We have a right to be, in a sense, in local parentheses, to a degree, to protect children from the effects of that kind of behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Sklar.
Can I have you repeat the question?
Sure, I have it in my hand.
All right.
So, what is your vision, and how, as a state representative, will you work to eradicate prejudice, including racial, ethnic, gender, sexual orientation?
So I'll first off start by saying, like, a month ago, we're all campaigning up here. We knock on doors. I'm out till the late, like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And I was in this one sub in West Bloomfield. I'm knocking, and this was about a month ago now. And, a cop pulls up on me, and, I'm in my green polo knocking, my lit, and he goes, "Hey, we got a call about a guy in a green polo in the neighborhood." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm campaigning out in the neighborhood." He's like, "Oh, you're not allowed to do that." I'm like, "Well, actually, officer, I am allowed to do this." And he's like, "Well, do you have a permit for this?" And I immediately go, "Well, actually, officer, we don't need a permit. It's legislative campaigning. We're exempt from all these laws." And so he goes, "Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, have a good day." And I honestly recognize, like, if I was anybody different, if I wasn't, a white male, like, out there, things would have been totally different. And that's why we need to, train our police officers more. And we need to give them the resources and tools necessary to confront themselves and their issues, so we have a better response from them and the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Arbit?
I mentioned before that I'm Jewish, and I am also running to be the youngest openly gay state legislator in Michigan history. And this is an incredibly important issue for me. It's very personal to me. And it's why I am running on a campaign to prioritize amending Michigan's hate crimes law and strengthening Michigan's hate crimes laws and transforming Michigan from a national laggard to a national leader on the issue of hate crimes and hate crimes prevention, intervention, and prosecution. Working at the prosecutor's office, I saw just how deficient Michigan is, and this is something that impacts not only the communities that I'm a part of, but every community that lives in this district, the Chaldean community, the Muslim community, Asian community, Black community, Indian community, everyone that you can think of is threatened with hate crimes. And we don't even have a good handle on where this issue is, because our data and reporting and tracking regimes are not where they need to be. So my first bill, when I'm elected, will be to introduce a criminal or an institutional vandalism statute to protect houses of worship and communal institutions from these types of attacks. And that is incredibly important to me, personally, and it's also the foundation of why I'm running and why I hope to serve West Bloomfield Commerce and the Lakes.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
My own family is very diverse. I have family members who are Jewish, who are Asian, who are Black, and it's important. It's a very important issue to me, even though I sit up here as your typical mutt white guy, right? But this is also about having somebody with elected experience addressing these issues. And while sitting on the school board for the last 6 years, I have had the opportunity and pleasure to have a voice and a championship voice for people of color who will apply to the district. And it's about ensuring that we have not just teachers and other employee groups such as secretaries and janitors, et cetera, that are representing minority groups. It's important that we have administrators. It's important that we have cabinet level administrators who will represent our student body, because children see something and they want to become that something. That is so important for them and for us as a community in West Bloomfield, as a society, and I look forward to having the opportunity to continuing that championship voice at our state legislature.
Thank you. Okay, and this is our last question, and it too is 1 minute. Okay, and we're going to begin with you, Mr. Sklar. The question is, how will you reach across the aisle to build partnerships so needed to problem solve and to reach consensus?
All right. Well, so that topic assumes that the other side's willing to do the same thing. And I'm more than willing to do that. And, reaching across the aisle, I think every Democrat, because we're in the minority now, says that, because that's what we have to do. But being in the state legislature, I worked for a representative. She flipped a red seat blue, and she never got a bill on the floor for a vote at all because she did that. And that's where Michigan politics comes into play. And we've seen time and time again when we're reaching across the aisle, yeah, we'll do it for taxes and, other things. But when it comes to like guns, women's health care, and education, there is no other hand to reach across the aisle to. And that's why I'd say again, that's why we got to flip this district and flip Michigan House and Senate, because it's not about separation of branches anymore. It's about separation of parties.
Thank you. Mr. Arbit?
I always say that I'm not running to be something, I'm running to do something. And I think that if you actually care about results, about delivering for people, if you actually have a mission that is beyond yourself, beyond holding a title or some position, then you will do whatever it takes, chase down every lead, exhaust every path to find that innovative, common sense solution that's going to bring people together. The issues that I'm championing, that I am going to prioritize, from this hate crimes issue, I think I'm going to get Republican buy-in from that, because I know that Republicans have an interest in ensuring that we all have an interest in ensuring that our communities are safe and not threatened, and that people are held accountable when they are breaking the law. And I think this issue of mental health too. We have our Republican candidate here talking about the issue of mental health, and I appreciate that she is doing so, because it's such an important issue. And some of these issues should just not be partisan. And I think it doesn't matter whose name is attached to a bill. If it's a good idea, you chase down every lead, you work with anyone, you get to know your colleagues, and you get it done.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
Working across the aisle, like I've said, is something that I've already done for these last 6 years. And it's important to have somebody with that experience who can take these conversations and really, not just work experience in education, not just elected experience, but life experience of being in the military. And, having all these experiences to draw from, to have those tough conversations that I've gained through life. Being that sandwich generation person where I have young kids still, and I have an aging mother who's trying to pay for her insulin and not be scammed on the phone by just everybody constantly barraging her with spam phone calls. And it's about being a true representative of everyone. Again, I've said it before, it's about elected experience, it's about work experience and life experience. That's going to make it easier to have those conversations and just walk up to somebody that's across the aisle and just commiserate about maybe they were a veteran as well. Maybe they've served in Desert Storm or somewhere else. And we're able to draw those experiences and talk about the Second Amendment. It's not an attack on the Second Amendment. It's really about protecting our children.
Thank you. Ms. Mohyi?
As an attorney for over a decade, I have had to develop my skills of negotiation. The state of Michigan, similar to other states, have practically 99% rate of settling cases. That means that you have to settle cases, or you have to understand the other side and develop the skills necessary to come to a mutual resolution. So I have the skill set for that. And I understand from all of that if you come into negotiation or discussion with someone believing that they're not going to try to see it your way or come to the middle, then you're never going to be able to resolve that issue. You can't put up a wall in your mind, because no matter who the person is, they'll have concerns and you need to find out what those are. So the point is, I have the skill and the know-how to do that, and I understand that we will get nowhere if we have certain views about each other, and that someone doesn't care about something, or someone won't do that because of the rules that we create in our heads. We have to create new rules in our minds and be open to what other people have to say, so that we can come to the agreements on important issues that everyone cares about.
Thank you. We've concluded the question portion of the forum, and we'll have closing statements in reverse order. Closing statements are 1 minute, and we begin with Mr. Sklar.
So again, this primary and election, it comes down to the candidate who knows Michigan's laws, Michigan's politics, and the issues that we're all facing. And I think I've shared with you those 3 traits here, from my past experience of, working 3 years in the State House, interning at the White House, and, getting the law degree last year from MSU College of Law. So when you go out to vote in this upcoming election, August 2nd, where you get an absentee ballot or you go in person, go to that Democratic section under legislative, and you'll see my name, James Sklar, and a box right next to it, and just shade that in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Mohyi?
So experience is really important. And, we have definitely a variety of candidates out there. But we also have to keep in mind the policies that have created a lot of damage in the last couple of years. And it's not been conservative policies that have created shutdowns and, destroyed our finances and made inflation skyrocket. It's been Democratic policies. So that's number one. So there are definitely various issues out there that can distract us from what's important. And obviously, many people find the abortion issue important, but the issues of daily life are also very important. Which policies are going to make sure that you can provide for your family, put gas in your car, feel safe on the street? Time and time again, conservative policies are the policies that can accomplish that. We live in a country that we're lucky to live in that is under the U.S. Constitution. We can't erode the principles that are put in place by that Constitution. And I will not only protect our rights, but also use my experience to the benefit of our community.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
All right, again, I'd like to say thanks again to the League of Women Voters and the West Bloomfield Parks for hosting tonight. I also want to say thanks to everybody that's here. We actually have a great turnout. I don't know if people watching can see that. Thanks for everybody watching virtually as well. And again, to my candidates, because this is fantastic to have this opportunity, and I'm using up my time thanking everybody. But my resume speaks for itself. As a career teacher, elected, veteran as well, I don't feel like I have to pad my resume with jobs where I worked just a few weeks or a few months, because I think that misleads our voters. It's important that you understand that I am a career union member and leader, and I have earned all my endorsements on my own merit. And I think it's important that you remember that this is a lean Democrat district, meaning whoever wins the Democratic primary is likely to win the general. And who do you think, everybody here and watching, who do you think is most likely to do that in the general? Somebody that has a lifetime of experience, or somebody that doesn't but has a good heart and good ideas, but doesn't have the experience really to get those things done. So thank you, and please vote for me or visit kenformichigan, kenformi.com, or Facebook.
Thank you. Mr. Arbit?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Experience matters. And it's not necessarily the years in your life that count, but the life in your years. And there's a reason why I've been endorsed by Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, by Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter, by our 2 Oakland County Commissioners, by a majority of the West Bloomfield Township Board of Trustees, by the UAW, by the AFL-CIO, by the Michigan Jewish Democrats, by the Hispanic and Latino Democrats. I could go on and on and on about the support that I have earned, because my record of leadership speaks for itself. And everyone who has endorsed me, everyone who has supported me, knows that I will be a relentless, passionate leader for this community. I know this community better than anyone here, and I will be the best representative that you can possibly elect for our state representative. And I just, this is never something I had a long-standing hankering to do or a long-festering ambition to be an elected official, but I was sick and tired of West Bloomfield being an afterthought, and I will do my best, my level best, to serve you and the people of this community well and faithfully.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters would like to thank the audience, candidates, and Civic Center TV for making this forum possible. For further information on these candidates, check the League website at lwvoa.org or go to vote411.org. When known, rebroadcast times for this forum will be on the League of Women Voters Oakland area website, lwvoa.org, and on Civic Center TV at www.civiccentertv.com. The League of Women Voters is funded by contributions from concerned businesses and citizens. Concerned businesses and citizens. Membership is open to men and women over 18 years of age. Remember to vote on August 2nd. Democracy is not a spectator sport.